On Christmas night in 1999, a 6-year-old girl ran to answer the front door while her family sat around the Christmas tree opening presents. She opened the door and said 3 words that would echo in her mother's mind for 11 years. "Oh, Santa Claus!" Then silence. By the time her mother reached the door 30 seconds later, the little girl was gone. The door stood wide open. Snow blew into the hallway, and the only thing left behind was the sound of Christmas music playing softly in a house that would never feel whole again. This is the story of Emma Wilson and the Christmas that destroyed a family in Pinewood, Montana. A story about how quickly joy can turn to nightmare, about a small town that learned the hardest way possible that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it comes dressed as Santa Claus on Christmas night, while families feel safe inside their homes. Pinewood sat quietly in the mountains of western Montana, population 3,500, the kind of place where Main Street looked like a postcard in December. White lights strung between lamp posts, wreaths on every door, snow that fell soft and steady from Thanksgiving through March. The kind of town where people moved for safety, for community, for the promise that their children could play outside without fear. Where neighbors shoveled each other's driveways without being asked. Where Christmas was celebrated with traditions that made families feel connected to something larger than themselves. The Wilson family lived in a 2-story blue house on Maple Street, 3 blocks from the elementary school. Sarah Wilson was 34, worked as a teacher's aide at Pinewood Elementary, where both her daughters attended. She had dark blonde hair that she wore in a ponytail most days, a warm smile that made kids feel safe, patient hands that tied shoelaces and wiped tears. Michael Wilson was 36, taught math at Pinewood High School. He'd grown up in this town, played football for the high school team, married his college sweetheart, built a life here that felt solid and real. He coached youth basketball on weekends, made pancakes every Saturday morning without fail. They had 2 daughters, and the house was always full of noise and laughter, and the kind of chaos that comes with raising children who feel loved. Sophie was 9, the older sister, responsible and careful. She had her mother's blonde hair and her father's serious brown eyes. She loved reading chapter books under her covers with a flashlight, helping her mother bake cookies, teaching Emma how to tie her shoes properly. Emma was 6, the baby of the family, bright and curious and full of questions that never seemed to end. She had light brown hair that fell in loose curls past her shoulders, green eyes that sparkled when she laughed, a gap between her front teeth that would disappear when her adult teeth came in. She followed Sophie everywhere, wanted to do everything her big sister did, asked why about everything from why the sky was blue to why people had to sleep at night. Her teachers said she was sweet, friendly, always the first to help put away supplies or hold the door for classmates. The Wilson family had rituals that held them together like glue. Pancakes every Saturday morning with chocolate chips for the girls, movie night every Friday with popcorn on the couch, Sunday dinners at the kitchen table where everyone shared the best and worst parts of their week. Bedtime was sacred. Michael would read to the girls in Sophie's room while Sarah cleaned the kitchen. Then Sarah would tuck them in, kiss their foreheads, whisper that she loved them more than the whole world, every single night without fail. Our community in Pinewood believed in traditions, in holding on to the things that made life feel stable and good. Christmas was the biggest tradition of all. The entire town came together for the tree lighting ceremony. Families went caroling door to door. The volunteer fire department drove Santa around on their truck while kids ran after it waving. The Wilsons took Christmas seriously. They put up their tree the weekend after Thanksgiving, all 4 of them decorating together while Christmas music played and hot chocolate cooled on the coffee table. They baked cookies for neighbors, wrapped presents together, drove around town looking at lights. Pinewood had another Christmas tradition that the kids especially loved. Every Christmas night around 7 o'clock, their neighbor Tom Harrison would dress up as Santa Claus and walk door to door on Maple Street, handing out candy canes to children. He'd been doing it for 10 years, ever since his wife had passed away, and his own kids had grown up and moved away. It was his way of keeping the Christmas spirit alive. Tom was 52, a retired postal worker who lived alone 3 houses down from the Wilsons. He was quiet most of the year, kept his yard neat, waved to neighbors from his porch. But on Christmas night, he transformed. Put on the red suit, the white beard, the black boots, walked slowly from house to house with a bag of candy canes for the children who waited excitedly at their windows. The Wilson girls loved Mr. Harrison's Christmas visit. Emma especially would press her face against the living room window starting at 6:30, watching for the man in the red suit. When she saw him coming up the street, she'd bounce on her toes and beg to be the one to answer the door. Sarah and Michael thought it was sweet. A harmless tradition in a town full of harmless traditions. Never once did they worry about a man dressed as Santa Claus coming to their door on Christmas night. This year felt especially magical. Snow had started falling on December 20th and hadn't stopped. By Christmas Eve, Pinewood looked like something from a storybook. On December 20th, the Wilson family had said goodbye to their close friends, Robert and Catherine Foster. The Fosters were moving to Missoula, about 150 miles west, for Robert's new job at a hospital there. He was a medical equipment salesman, had gotten a better position. The Fosters had been friends with the Wilsons for 5 years. They'd met at church, bonded over backyard barbecues and game nights. Catherine and Sarah had become close, met for coffee twice a week. The Fosters had never been able to have children. They'd tried for years, gone through fertility treatments, considered adoption. Nothing had worked. Catherine had held baby Emma when she was born, tears in her eyes, telling Sarah how lucky she was. The goodbye had been emotional. Catherine had hugged both girls tightly, told them to be good, promised they'd visit soon. Robert had helped Michael load some furniture. They'd driven off in a moving truck on a gray Monday morning, waving until they disappeared around the corner. Christmas Eve was perfect. The family went to the candlelight service at church, came home to hot chocolate and Christmas cookies. The girls hung their stockings by the fireplace, set out cookies and milk for Santa, went to bed buzzing with excitement. Christmas morning was everything it should be. The girls woke up at 6, ran downstairs to find presents under the tree. Sarah and Michael watched from the couch, coffee in hand, smiling at the joy on their daughters' faces. Sophie got the Nancy Drew book set she'd been wanting. Emma got a baby doll that cried real tears. Both girls got new winter coats and snow boots and matching pajamas with candy canes on them. They spent the day in their pajamas. Michael made his famous pancakes. They watched Christmas movies curled up on the couch. Sarah prepared Christmas dinner, turkey and mashed potatoes and green bean casserole. By evening, the house smelled like home. The tree lights twinkled in the corner. Bing Crosby played softly on the stereo. The girls were still in their candy cane pajamas, playing with their new toys. Emma had been watching out the window since 6:30, waiting for Mr. Harrison to appear in his Santa suit. This year she wanted to be the first one to see him coming down the street. At 7 o'clock, Sarah called everyone to the living room. It was time for their tradition, opening one last present each before dinner. Michael always saved the best gifts for last. The family gathered around the tree. Sophie sat cross-legged on the floor. Emma reluctantly left her post by the window, still glancing back, hoping to see Santa coming. Michael handed Sophie her present first, a big box wrapped in silver paper with a red bow. Sophie tore into it carefully, her eyes going wide. A new bicycle helmet and knee pads, which meant the bicycle she'd been dreaming about was probably in the garage. "Dad, really?" Her voice was pure joy. Michael grinned, pulled her into a hug. Then he handed Emma her present. A medium-sized box wrapped in green paper with gold ribbon. Emma started pulling at the ribbon, her small fingers fumbling with the bow. And then the doorbell rang. Emma's head snapped up. Her face lit up with pure excitement. "It's Mr. Harrison! It's Santa!" She jumped to her feet and ran toward the door before anyone could say anything, her little feet in fuzzy socks padding across the hardwood floor faster than anyone could stop her. "Emma, wait." Sarah started to stand up from the couch, smiling because she knew how much Emma loved this tradition. But Emma was already at the door, already reaching for the handle, already pulling it open. Sarah heard her daughter's voice, bright and excited and full of pure wonder. "Oh, Santa Claus!" And then, nothing. Sarah smiled for just a second, thinking she'd let Emma have her moment, then she'd invite Mr. Harrison in for a quick cup of cocoa, like they did every year. She stood up from the couch, started walking towards the door. "Emma, honey, invite Mr. Harrison in." No answer. Sarah walked faster. Something felt wrong suddenly. The air had changed. She reached the hallway. The front door stood wide open. Cold air rushed in. Snow blew across the hardwood floor. The Christmas wreath on the door swung slightly in the wind. But Emma wasn't there. Sarah's heart stopped. She looked outside. The porch was empty. The yard was empty. Snow fell quietly in the yellow glow of the porch light. Emma? She stepped onto the porch, looked left, then right. The street was empty. No Santa, no Mr. Harrison, no Emma. Just snow and silence and Christmas lights glowing in windows. "Emma? Where are you?" Her voice cut through the quiet night. A few dogs barked in response. Nothing else. Sarah ran back inside. "Michael! Emma's not here!" Michael came out of the living room, his face confused. "What do you mean she's not here?" "She opened the door for Mr. Harrison and now she's gone. The door was just standing open." Michael's expression changed instantly. He pushed past Sarah, ran onto the porch, down the steps, into the yard. "Emma!" His voice was loud now, urgent. "Emma Wilson, answer me right now!" Nothing. Sarah ran back inside, her panic rising fast. She checked the living room where Sophie still sat by the tree, her present forgotten, her face scared. "Where's Emma?" Sophie shook her head, tears starting to form in her eyes. Sarah checked the kitchen, the bathroom, the coat closet. She ran upstairs, checked both bedrooms, under beds, in closets, everywhere a 6-year-old might hide. "Emma, this isn't funny. Come out right now." Michael came back inside, snow in his hair, his face pale. "She's not outside. I checked everywhere. She's not there." Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. She was right there. She opened the door, said she saw Santa, and then nothing. I came to the door maybe 30 seconds later and she was just gone. Michael grabbed his coat, pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police." He dialed 911 with shaking hands, while Sarah tore through the house again, calling Emma's name until her voice went raw and broken. Sophie sat frozen by the Christmas tree, tears streaming down her face, her new present still wrapped in her lap. The operator answered. Michael's voice shook as he spoke. "My daughter is missing. She's 6 years old. Someone dressed as Santa Claus was at our door and now she's gone." The operator asked the standard questions. Michael answered quickly. 5 minutes, maybe less. Candy cane pajamas and fuzzy socks. No medical issues. She wouldn't run away. Someone took her. Within 10 minutes, 2 Pinewood police patrol cars pulled up outside the Wilson house, lights flashing red and blue against the snow. Chief Daniel Crawford got out, a man in his 50s who'd known the Wilson family for years. He walked up the front steps where Sarah stood shivering, arms wrapped around herself. "Sarah, Michael, tell me exactly what happened," Sarah explained through tears. The doorbell ringing. Emma running to answer it because she thought it was Mr. Harrison doing his annual Santa visit. Her excited voice saying, "Oh, Santa Claus." Then silence. Sarah walking to the door 30 seconds later to find it standing open, and Emma gone. Crawford's face went serious. He asked if they'd confirmed whether Tom Harrison had actually been at their door. Michael said no, they hadn't seen who was there. Emma had opened the door before they could get to her. Crawford radioed his officers immediately. "Get to Tom Harrison's house right now, 3 houses down on Maple. Bring him in for questioning." Within minutes, officers were knocking on Tom Harrison's door. He answered wearing his Santa suit, holding a bag of candy canes, looking confused. "What's going on?" "We need you to come with us, Mr. Harrison. Emma Wilson is missing." Tom's face went white. "What? Missing? I haven't even been to their house yet. I was about to head over there next." The officers asked him to come down to the station anyway. Tom went willingly, still in his Santa suit, still holding the bag of candy canes. Back at the Wilson house, the search was underway. Officers walked the entire block, knocked on every door, asked if anyone had seen anything. Nobody had. The snow that made Pinewood look like a Christmas postcard now made searching nearly impossible. Fresh snow covered any footprints. The wind had picked up, erasing evidence as fast as it could be created. Neighbors came out to help. Word spread fast. Within an hour, half of Pinewood was searching. People who'd been sitting down to Christmas dinner put on coats and boots and joined the search lines. If you've ever felt pure panic rising in your chest, making it hard to breathe, making the world spin, you know what Sarah Wilson felt standing in her doorway watching strangers search for her daughter. By 9 o'clock, the FBI had been called. By 10 o'clock, roadblocks had been set up on every highway. By 11 o'clock, Emma had been missing for 4 hours. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees. Snow was still falling. Chief Crawford came back to the Wilson house at midnight. "We've searched a 2-mile radius. Every house, every building, every vehicle. We've got helicopters coming at first light. The FBI is sending agents from Billings. We're doing everything we can." Sarah's legs gave out. Michael caught her, held her up, his own tears falling into her hair. Sophie sat on the stairs watching her parents fall apart. She was 9 years old, and old enough to understand that something terrible had happened, that her little sister was gone, that Christmas would never feel the same again. Sarah kept whispering the same thing over and over. "I should have answered the door. I should have gone with her. Why did I let her go alone?" Michael held her tighter, but he had no answers. Nobody did. And somewhere in the darkness, a little girl in candy cane pajamas was being driven away from the only home she'd ever known. The first 48 hours after Emma Wilson disappeared felt like 48 years to Sarah and Michael. They didn't sleep, didn't eat, couldn't sit still for more than a few minutes before jumping up to check the phone or look out the window, hoping their daughter would somehow walk back through the door. By December 26th, the case had spread beyond Pinewood. News vans from Billings and Missoula parked on Maple Street. Reporters knocked on doors asking neighbors what they knew about the missing girl, about the Santa Claus who took her, about whether this quiet town had been hiding something dark all along. Sarah refused to talk to the media. She stayed inside, curtains drawn, staring at Emma's empty chair at the kitchen table. Every hour that passed without news felt like another piece of her heart breaking off and dying. Michael handled the press because someone had to. He stood on the front porch that cold December morning, cameras pointed at his face, and read from a statement he'd written at 4 a.m. when sleep refused to come. He said Emma was a good kid, that she was trusting and kind and believed in Santa Claus with her whole heart. He said someone had used that innocence against her, had dressed up as Santa to lure her away. He begged whoever took her to bring her home. "Please, it's Christmas. Bring our daughter home." His voice cracked on the last sentence, and the cameras caught it. That clip would play on the evening news for days, a father breaking down on national television begging for his daughter's life. Our community of families dealing with missing loved ones knows that the first 48 hours are critical, that every minute counts when someone vanishes without a trace like this girl. And in those first hours, Pinewood came together in ways small towns do when tragedy strikes close to home. The local church became a command center. Volunteers brought coffee and sandwiches. Someone set up a phone bank to handle tips coming in from the hotline. Emma's photo was everywhere, on telephone poles, in store windows, handed out at gas stations along every highway. Sophie stayed with her grandmother those first few days. She was too young to understand everything, but old enough to know her little sister was gone. She kept asking when Emma was coming home. Nobody had an answer that made sense to a 9-year-old. FBI agents arrived from Billings on December 27th. Lead agent was Detective Karen Hayes, 42 years old, had worked child abduction cases for 15 years. She sat with Sarah and Michael at their kitchen table and asked the hard questions. Had they noticed anyone showing unusual interest in Emma? Any strangers hanging around the neighborhood? Anyone who might have known their Christmas traditions? Both parents shook their heads. Nothing. Everything had been normal. Perfect, even, until the doorbell rang. Hayes asked about the Santa costume. They'd brought Tom Harrison in for questioning Christmas night. What did they know about him? Sarah said Tom had been their neighbor for years, that he'd lived 3 houses down since before they'd moved to Maple Street, that his wife had died about 10 years ago, that his kids had grown up and moved away, that he'd started the Santa tradition after his wife passed, said it was something she'd always wanted him to do. Michael added that Tom seemed like a good man. Quiet, kept to himself, but always friendly when you talked to him. The kids loved his Christmas visits. Emma had been waiting for him by the window. Hayes asked if Tom had ever made them uncomfortable, ever said or done anything that seemed off. Both parents said no. Never. He'd been doing the Santa visits for a decade. Every year, same routine. Walked Maple Street, handed out candy canes, made kids smile. It was a sweet tradition. Hayes pulled out her notes. Said Tom claimed he hadn't been to the Wilson house yet when Emma disappeared, that he'd been planning to go there next when he saw the police cars. Sarah's face went pale. She said if Tom hadn't rung their doorbell, then who had? That was the question nobody could answer. At the police station, Tom Harrison sat in an interrogation room for the 2nd day in a row. He was still wearing parts of his Santa costume when they'd brought him in, had been allowed to change into regular clothes, but the red suit sat in an evidence bag on the table between him and Detective Hayes. Hayes asked him to walk through his evening one more time. Tom sighed, exhausted. He said he'd put on the Santa suit around 6:30 like he did every year. Had filled his bag with candy canes he'd bought at Costco, same as always. Started walking Maple Street around 7, going house to house. He'd stopped at the Mitchell's house first, then the Johnsons, then the Patels. Had about 10 houses on his route. The Wilson house was always one of the last ones because it was farther down the street. Hayes asked what time he'd planned to get to the Wilsons. Tom said probably around 7:30, 7:40. But when he was leaving the Patel's house around 7:20, he'd seen police cars racing down Maple Street with lights flashing. He'd walked that direction to see what was happening, saw officers at the Wilson house, saw Sarah Wilson crying on the porch. He'd asked a neighbor what happened. They'd told him Emma Wilson was missing. that someone dressed as Santa had taken her. Tom said his stomach had dropped. He'd walked straight up to the first officer he saw, said he was Tom Harrison, that he lived down the street, that he'd been dressed as Santa that night, that he hadn't taken Emma but wanted to help however he could. The officers had brought him in immediately. Hayes asked if anyone could confirm his timeline. Tom gave the names of every family he'd visited. The Mitchells, the Johnsons, the Patels. All of them could confirm he'd been at their houses. All of them could confirm the times. Hayes said they'd already checked. Everyone confirmed Tom's story. He'd been exactly where he said he'd been. But that didn't explain who'd rung the Wilsons' doorbell dressed as Santa Claus. Hayes asked if Tom owned more than one Santa suit. Tom said no, just the one. Had bought it 10 years ago at a costume shop in Missoula. Wore it every year, stored it in his closet the rest of the time. Hayes asked if anyone else in town owned a Santa suit. Tom said probably a dozen people. The fire department had 3. The Elks Lodge had 2. Several families had them for parties. Santa suits weren't exactly rare in a small town at Christmas. The interview lasted 4 hours. Tom answered every question. Never asked for a lawyer. Seemed genuinely devastated that Emma was missing and that he was being questioned for it. But the town had already decided. By the time Tom was released pending further investigation on December 28th, word had spread. Tom Harrison dressed as Santa every year. Tom Harrison had been on Maple Street that night. Emma had said she saw Santa Claus. It had to be Tom. The fact that his timeline checked out didn't matter to most people. The fact that witnesses confirmed he'd been at other houses didn't matter. Fear and grief needed a target, and Tom Harrison was the obvious choice. Someone spray-painted child killer across his garage door. Someone else threw a rock through his front window with a note that said, "We know what you did." He started getting threatening phone calls at all hours. People drove past his house slowly, staring, some of them shouting. Tom's daughter Melissa drove up from Seattle on December 29th. She found her father sitting in the dark, curtains drawn, looking 10 years older than he had a week ago. "Dad, you need to leave. Come stay with me. This town has lost its mind." Tom shook his head. He said leaving would make him look guilty, that he hadn't done anything wrong, that Emma Wilson was out there somewhere and running away wouldn't help find her. Melissa begged him to think about his safety, said the police couldn't protect him from an angry mob. Tom said he'd stay until they found Emma, until they found the person who'd actually taken her. Sarah saw the news coverage and felt sick. She wanted someone to blame, wanted someone to be punished for taking her daughter. But something about the rush to judgment felt wrong. She told Michael that night, sitting in Emma's bedroom because sleeping in their own bed felt impossible, that Tom's story made sense. That if he'd been planning to come to their house, if he'd been at other houses when Emma was taken, then someone else had been dressed as Santa that night. Michael asked who else would dress up as Santa on Christmas night. Sarah said she didn't know, but Tom Harrison had been doing this tradition openly for 10 years. If he'd wanted to take Emma, why would he do it on the one night everyone knew he'd be dressed as Santa? Why would he make himself the obvious suspect? Michael said maybe Tom thought no one would believe it was him because the tradition was so well known. Maybe he was hiding in plain sight. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something, that the real answer was somewhere else. On December 30th, FBI finished searching Tom Harrison's house, tore through every room, every closet, every drawer, looking for anything that might connect him to Emma. They found the Santa suit in his closet where he'd said it would be. Found receipts for candy canes bought at Costco 3 days before Christmas. Found photo albums of his late wife, of his own children growing up, of Christmases past. Found a widower who'd been trying to keep his wife's memory alive by bringing joy to neighborhood kids. They found nothing that suggested he'd ever had Emma Wilson in that house. No secret rooms, no hidden spaces, no evidence of a 6-year-old girl anywhere. Hayes came to the Wilson house on December 31st with the news. The evidence against Tom Harrison was non-existent. His timeline checked out. Witnesses confirmed his movements. His house was clean. Michael stood up fast, his chair scraping against the floor. He said someone dressed as Santa took Emma, and Tom was the only person they knew who was dressed as Santa that night. Hayes said Tom wasn't the only person. Santa suits could be bought or rented anywhere. Someone else could have bought one, worn it specifically to frame Tom Harrison. Sarah asked who would do that. Hayes said that was what they needed to figure out. By New Year's Day 2000, Tom Harrison had left Pinewood. His children packed his things, loaded them into a truck, drove him to Seattle where he'd live with Melissa and her family. His house on Maple Street stood empty. The town watched him go and felt relief mixed with anger that he'd never been charged, never been punished for what many people still believed he'd done. Sarah watched him go and felt the same hollow emptiness she'd felt every day since Christmas. The wrong man destroyed while the real answer stayed hidden. The months that followed were brutal. The FBI kept working the case, but leads dried up fast. No ransom demands, no sightings, no body found. Emma had simply vanished. Sarah quit her job at the school. She couldn't walk those hallways where Emma used to meet her after class, couldn't see other people's children and not think about her own. Michael kept teaching because someone had to pay bills, but his heart wasn't in it. The house felt like a tomb. They kept Emma's room exactly as she'd left it. Her half-opened present still sat by the Christmas tree that Sarah couldn't take down until March. Her candy cane pajamas still lay folded on her bed. Sophie came home from her grandmother's in January. She was quieter now, didn't laugh as much, spent most of her time in her room reading. She'd lost her little sister and part of her childhood in one night. If you've ever lost someone and felt them everywhere and nowhere at the same time, you know the specific torture of a house that's become a shrine to absence. The years crawled forward slowly, painfully. Sarah and Michael's marriage strained under grief that grew heavier with each year. They loved each other, but love wasn't enough to fill the space Emma had left behind. They stopped celebrating Christmas after that first year. Couldn't bear to put up a tree, to hear Christmas music, to see Santa Claus anywhere. But Sarah couldn't let go completely. Every year on Emma's birthday, July 14th, she baked a cake, set it on the kitchen table, lit candles, sang happy birthday to an empty room. Every Christmas, Sarah bought Emma a present, wrapped it carefully, put it under a small tree she set up in Emma's room where Michael couldn't see it. Age-appropriate gifts for the daughter who was growing up somewhere without her. Michael thought she needed to let go. Sarah thought she needed to hold on. The distance between them grew wider every year. Sophie graduated from high school in 2008, left for college in Seattle. Said she loved her parents but couldn't stay in that house anymore, couldn't live in a museum dedicated to her missing sister. By 2010, Sarah was 45, her hair more gray than blonde now. Michael was 47, moved slower, looked older than his years. They still lived in the blue house on Maple Street. Still kept Emma's room exactly as it had been 11 years ago. The case was cold, ice cold. The FBI had moved on to other missing children. Chief Crawford had retired. The new police chief reviewed Emma's file once a year and found nothing new. Most people in Pinewood had stopped thinking about Emma Wilson. The case had become local legend. The girl who vanished on Christmas night, a cautionary tale parents told their children. But Sarah never stopped. She'd started a small support group from her living room in 2005. Other parents who'd lost children, who understood the hell of not knowing. She printed new flyers every few months, age-progressed photos showing what Emma might look like now. 17 years old. A teenager. Someone Sarah had never met. She'd drive to neighboring towns, tape flyers to bulletin boards, hand them to strangers. Most people glanced and moved on. Nobody ever called with real information. And 150 miles away in Missoula, Emma Wilson was living with the people she'd come to call Mom and Dad over the past 11 years. She was 17 now, a junior in high school. She had light brown hair that she usually wore in a ponytail, green eyes that didn't sparkle the way they used to, a quiet demeanor that came from years of being told not to ask too many questions. She didn't remember much about before. Catherine had told her that her real parents couldn't take care of her, that they'd been too young and unprepared, that giving her to the Fosters had been the best thing for everyone. Emma had believed it because what choice did she have? She'd been 6 years old. Her memories were fuzzy. A big sister, a blue house, Christmas music, pancakes. But those memories felt like dreams, not real life. Real life was this house, this quiet existence, these parents who loved her in their own careful way. Catherine had homeschooled her until 8th grade, said public school wasn't safe, that people would judge her, that it was better to learn at home. When Emma finally started high school, she was so far behind socially she didn't know how to make friends. She went to school, came home, did homework, ate dinner with Robert and Catherine. That was her life. Quiet, controlled. But cracks were starting to show. Catherine's hands shaking when news showed missing children stories. Robert's sharp voice when Emma asked about her life before the Fosters. The way they both tensed when police cars drove past. Emma had started to wonder. But wondering felt dangerous. Questioning felt like betrayal. So she stayed quiet and tried to be grateful. She didn't know that 150 miles away, a woman was wrapping a present for her. A simple silver bracelet with a butterfly charm, wrapped in paper covered with snowflakes. She didn't know that tomorrow, December 25th, 2010, would be the day her two worlds collided. Because tomorrow, Dr. Jennifer Martinez would notice something during a routine physical that would change everything. December 25th, 2010, 11 years to the day after Emma Wilson disappeared from her home in Pinewood, Dr. Jennifer Martinez walked into exam room 3 at Missoula Community Hospital for what should have been a routine annual physical. The patient was a 17-year-old girl named Emma Foster, homeschooled until recently, now attending Missoula High as a junior. Quiet, polite, accompanied by her mother, Catherine, who answered most of the questions before the girl could speak. Dr. Martinez had been a pediatrician for 20 years. She'd learned to read the small signs that something wasn't right. The way a child flinched when a parent moved too quickly. The way answers came too rehearsed, too careful. The way fear hid behind practiced smiles. This girl had all those signs. Martinez asked Catherine to step out while she completed the physical exam. Standard procedure for teenagers. Catherine hesitated, said she preferred to stay. Martinez smiled politely but firmly. Said hospital policy required privacy for patients over 16 unless they specifically requested a parent present. Catherine looked at Emma, who nodded quickly, said it was fine. Once Catherine left, Martinez started the exam. Checked height, weight, blood pressure. All normal. Asked about school, friends, hobbies. Emma's answers were short, careful. School was fine. She didn't have many friends. She liked reading. Martinez asked if she played any sports. Emma shook her head, said her parents preferred she focus on schoolwork. Martinez asked if she had a boyfriend, if she was sexually active. Standard questions for a 17-year-old. Emma's face went red. She said no, absolutely not. Her parents would never allow that. The phrasing struck Martinez as odd. Not, "I'm not interested," but "my parents would never allow that." Martinez continued the exam. Asked Emma to remove her shirt so she could check her lungs and heart. That's when she saw it. On Emma's left shoulder blade, partially hidden by her bra strap, was a birthmark. Small, shaped like a butterfly, dark brown against pale skin. Martinez had seen that birthmark before. 6 years ago, during a conference on missing children cases. A presentation by FBI agent Karen Hayes about cold cases that needed fresh eyes. One case had stuck with Martinez. A 6-year-old girl who vanished on Christmas night in 1999 from a small town in Montana. The girl had a distinctive butterfly-shaped birthmark on her left shoulder blade. The case had gone cold after a neighbor was cleared and left town. The girl's name was Emma Wilson. Martinez kept her expression neutral, finished the exam, told Emma everything looked healthy. She could get dressed now. Once Emma's shirt was back on, Martinez sat down and asked a few more questions. Casual, friendly. Where was Emma born? Emma hesitated, said she thought California, but wasn't sure. Her parents had moved around a lot when she was little. Did she have a birth certificate? Emma said her mother kept all that stuff. She'd never really looked at it. Martinez asked what Emma remembered about being 6 years old. Emma's face went distant. She said not much. Her memories from back then were fuzzy. She remembered Christmas, though. Snow, presents, music. Martinez asked if she remembered where she was that Christmas. Emma said here, Missoula, with her parents. But her eyes said something different. Her eyes said she wasn't sure. Martinez thanked her, said she'd get the paperwork ready for discharge. Told Emma to send her mother back in. The moment Catherine Foster walked back into the exam room, Martinez knew. The way Catherine's eyes went immediately to Emma, checking her face. The way her hand gripped Emma's shoulder just a bit too tight. The way her voice came out just a bit too controlled. Everything okay? Martinez said everything was fine. Perfectly healthy teenager, no concerns. Catherine relaxed slightly, but not completely. Martinez said she'd be right back with the discharge papers, stepped out of the room, walked straight to her office, and called 911. She spoke quickly, quietly, said she was a doctor at Missoula Community Hospital, that she had a 17-year-old patient who matched the description of Emma Wilson, a girl who'd been missing from Pinewood, Montana since 1999. The birthmark matched. The age matched. The timeline matched. The operator asked if she was certain. Martinez said no, but certain enough to report it. That law enforcement needed to get here now before the mother left with the girl. Within 15 minutes, 2 police officers arrived. Plain clothes, casual. Walked into the hospital like they were visiting someone. Martinez met them in the hallway, explained everything. The birthmark, the age, the careful answers, the mother who answered for her daughter, the vague memories Emma had of being 6 years old. The officers radioed for backup, for FBI, for every resource available. One officer stayed in the hallway near exam room 3. The other went to the front desk to make sure Catherine Foster couldn't leave the building with Emma. Martinez went back to the exam room with the discharge papers. Smiled at Catherine, said everything was in order. They were free to go. Catherine thanked her, stood up, put her hand on Emma's shoulder. They walked out of the exam room together, down the hallway toward the exit. And that's when 2 FBI agents appeared, blocking their path. Catherine Foster? Catherine's face went white. Yes? We need you to come with us. We have some questions about Emma. Catherine's grip on Emma's shoulder tightened. What kind of questions? We haven't done anything wrong. The agent looked at Emma. What's your full name? Emma glanced at Catherine, then back at the agent. Emma Foster. What's your birth date? July 14th, 1993. The agent nodded slowly. Have you ever heard the name Emma Wilson? Emma's face went blank. No, I don't think so. The agent pulled out a photo. Old, from 1999. A 6-year-old girl with light brown curls and green eyes, smiling at the camera in a Christmas dress. Do you recognize this girl? Emma stared at the photo for a long time. Her hands started shaking. She whispered something so quietly, almost nobody heard it. That's me. Catherine tried to pull Emma away. We're leaving. You have no right. The agent held up a hand. Mrs. Foster, we have reason to believe this girl is Emma Wilson, who was abducted from Pinewood, Montana on December 25th, 1999. We're not arresting anyone yet, but we need to sort this out. Catherine's face crumpled. You don't understand. We saved her. Her parents couldn't take care of her. We gave her a better life. The agent's expression hardened. Emma Wilson's parents have been searching for her for 11 years. They never gave her up. They never stopped looking. Emma looked between Catherine and the agent, her entire world cracking apart. What are you talking about? The agent spoke gently. Emma, your real name might be Emma Wilson. Your real parents are Sarah and Michael Wilson. They live in Pinewood. They've been looking for you since Christmas night 1999. Emma shook her head. No, that's not true. My parents are right here. I've always been with them. But even as she said it, memories were breaking through. The blue house, the big sister, pancakes on Saturday morning, Christmas music, a doorbell ringing, running to answer it. Oh, Santa Claus! Her own voice, 6 years old, excited, before everything went dark. She looked at Catherine with tears in her eyes. You told me they didn't want me. Catherine was crying now, too. We gave you a better life. We loved you. We gave you everything. You stole me. The words came out small but certain. FBI agents took Catherine into custody. Another agent, a woman with kind eyes, sat with Emma in a private room at the hospital. She asked Emma what she remembered. Emma said she didn't know what was real anymore. She remembered living with the Fosters for as long as she could remember. But she also remembered fragments. A sister named Sophie, a house on Maple Street, a dad who made pancakes, a mom who tucked her in every night. The agent said those memories were real, that Sarah and Michael Wilson had never stopped looking for her, that they'd been waiting 11 years for this moment. Emma asked if they still wanted her back after all this time. The agent's voice was gentle. They've been waiting for exactly this, every day for 4,018 days. Meanwhile, agents were arresting Robert Foster at his workplace in Missoula. He didn't resist, didn't fight, just stood there while they read him his rights. When they searched the Foster home, they found the Santa suit in a storage box in the basement. Red velvet, white trim, black boots. The suit Robert had worn on Christmas night 1999 when he'd driven to Pinewood, knocked on the Wilsons' door, and taken Emma when she'd opened it thinking he was her friendly neighbor, Mr. Harrison. They found journals Catherine had kept, detailed entries about wanting a child, about watching Emma grow up through the Wilsons' kitchen window during coffee visits with Sarah, about planning the abduction down to the smallest detail. Robert had known about Tom Harrison's tradition, had known the town would blame Tom, had bought a Santa suit specifically to frame an innocent man while he and Catherine drove away with a 6-year-old girl who trusted them because they were family friends. And 150 miles away in Pinewood, Sarah Wilson was sitting in Emma's bedroom like she did every Christmas. The small tree in the corner had one present under it, wrapped in snowflake paper, a silver bracelet with a butterfly charm. She was about to light the candles on the cake she'd baked when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Mrs. Wilson? Yes? This is FBI Special Agent Karen Hayes. I'm calling from Missoula. We found your daughter. Sarah dropped the phone. Her legs gave out. She sat down hard on Emma's bed with her hand over her mouth. Michael heard the crash, came running upstairs, found his wife on the floor, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. He picked up the phone. Hayes repeated it. They'd found Emma. She was alive. She'd been living in Missoula for 11 years with Robert and Catherine Foster. They'd taken her on Christmas night, 1999, dressed as Santa Claus, while the town blamed Tom Harrison. Michael couldn't speak, could only nod even though Hayes couldn't see him. After 11 years of searching, their daughter was coming home. Hayes said they could come to Missoula right now, that Emma was at the hospital, that she was confused and scared, but she was asking about them. Sarah grabbed the phone, asked if this was real, if they were absolutely sure it was Emma. Hayes said yes. The birthmark matched. The age matched. And Emma remembered. She remembered the blue house, the pancakes, the sister named Sophie. She remembered Christmas 1999. Sarah and Michael were in the car within 5 minutes. Called Sophie from the road, could barely get the words out. Emma had been found. Their baby sister was alive. The drive to Missoula took 2 hours. Sarah couldn't stop shaking. Michael drove with both hands gripping the wheel. When they walked into Missoula Community Hospital and Agent Hayes led them to a private room, Sarah knew it was real. Emma was sitting on a couch, wrapped in a blanket. She was 17 now, so much older than the 6-year-old girl they'd lost. Taller, thinner, with hair pulled back. But it was her. It was their baby. Sarah crossed the room before she realized she was moving. She knelt in front of Emma, her hands shaking as she reached up to touch her daughter's face. Emma? Emma looked at her with confused eyes, eyes that were trying so hard to remember. Mom? The word broke something open in Sarah. She started crying, pulled Emma close, held her like she'd wanted to for 4,018 days. I never stopped looking, not one single day. I never gave up. Emma didn't hug back at first. 11 years was a long time. These people were strangers, even if they felt familiar. But slowly, carefully, her arms came up and wrapped around her mother. And somewhere in her fractured memory, something shifted. The smell of her mother's perfume, the sound of her voice, the feeling of safety that came from being held by someone who'd loved her before she could even remember. Michael stood in the doorway crying. He sat down slowly beside Sarah. Put his hand on Emma's shoulder. I'm so sorry we didn't protect you. I'm so sorry it took us this long to find you. Emma looked at him, and something flickered in her eyes. You made pancakes on Saturdays. Michael's voice broke. Every single Saturday, with chocolate chips for you and Sophie. Sophie? Emma said the name like she was testing it. My sister. Your sister, Sarah confirmed. She's in Seattle. She's on her way here right now. Our community knows that justice doesn't erase the years lost or the trauma endured, but it provides closure, a line drawn between past and future. Robert and Catherine Foster were both charged with kidnapping, child endangerment, conspiracy, and a dozen other counts. The trial was held 6 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. The Santa suit found in their basement. Catherine's journals detailing the plan. Emma's testimony about 11 years of isolation and lies. Phone records showing Robert had been in Pinewood on Christmas night, 1999. The jury took 2 hours to convict them both. Robert got life in prison without possibility of parole. Catherine got 35 years. The judge's words at sentencing were harsh. He said they'd stolen 11 years from Emma Wilson, destroyed her childhood, manipulated her into believing her real family hadn't wanted her, caused immeasurable pain to a family that had done nothing to deserve it. And they'd destroyed Tom Harrison's life by framing him with a carefully planned costume choice. Tom Harrison, who'd moved to Seattle in shame, received a formal apology from the FBI and the Pinewood Police Department. They offered a settlement. Tom accepted it and donated half to organizations that helped wrongfully accused people. When reporters asked how he felt about the Fosters being caught, Tom said he was glad Emma had been found, but sad that it took 11 years. That a little girl had spent her entire childhood stolen because 2 people couldn't accept they couldn't have children of their own. He said he'd never go back to Pinewood, that the town had taught him how quickly fear could destroy innocent lives, that he'd never wear a Santa suit again. Emma's recovery was slow and painful. She moved back to Pinewood with Sarah and Michael, back into her old room that Sarah had kept exactly as she'd left it 11 years ago. The first months were the hardest. Her memories came back in pieces. She'd remember Sophie reading to her at bedtime. Then nothing until she remembered the Fosters. The 2 lives overlapped and contradicted. Sophie came home from college, took a semester off. They sat in Emma's room for hours, looking at photo albums, talking about memories Emma couldn't quite reach. Sarah and Michael never gave up. They got Emma into therapy with a specialist who understood trauma and manipulation. They learned her triggers, her patterns, how to support her. Slowly, over months and years, Emma started to heal. She finished high school online, then took classes at community college. She started volunteering at a center for missing children. She wrote a book about her experience when she was 23. On the dedication page, she wrote, "To Mom and Dad, who never stopped looking. To Sophie, who never forgot me. To Dr. Martinez, who paid attention. And to Mr. Harrison, whose tradition was stolen along with my childhood." Sarah's support group grew. She helped dozens of families navigate the nightmare she'd lived through. Michael went back to coaching youth basketball. The Wilson family never forgot the 11 years they'd lost. But they didn't let those years define the rest of their lives. They celebrated Emma's 18th birthday together 6 months after she came home. All 4 of them crowded around a cake. Sarah cried happy tears for the first time in over a decade. Emma looked at her family, these people who'd refused to give up, and felt something she hadn't felt in 11 years. She felt like she was home. Really, truly home. If this story reminded you that hope never dies, that truth always surfaces, remember this. Somewhere out there, another person is still waiting to be found. Another family is still searching. Pay attention to the small signs. Believe children when they say something's wrong. Trust your instincts when something doesn't feel right. Because Emma Wilson was saved by a doctor who noticed a birthmark, by an FBI agent who remembered a cold case, and by parents who refused to believe their daughter was gone forever. The truth always surfaces. Sometimes it just takes 11 years, and one person paying attention at exactly the right moment.